I'm going live now. Setting up.
Yeah. It's live now. Yeah.
Setting up. Good evening, everyone, and we are here today with another live conversation under our series called Reflections. And as you would have seen before, and I would like to again,
Good evening, everyone.
we are here today with another live conversation. And is not prescriptive. This program is not something that recommends something specific or any therapy or therapy center as such, but it's more about sharing experiences, sharing the life that people have had till now, taking some kind of inspiration from there, taking some kind of a real stories. It might be stories of challenges also. It might be stories of hope as well. And in this series, we have been able to bring in a perspectives of a parent professional, perspective of a parent, perspective of a father. And today we have with us Ms. Aparna Das, and she would bring in the perspective of a sibling. So welcome, Aparna ji, on this live conversation.
Thank you.
And I hope we would get to know a lot of real stories from you today. I know that you have a center that you have developed there in Dehradun. And like you told me, you are so inspired by your sister, Rooney. And I would like to start from there. And I would like to know how was your and Rooney's childhood? How was it at that time? Was she your only sibling? How was it all about?
Okay, so also just want to say that Rooney is short form for Arunima. And so the project is named after her. So I think she's really been like a guiding force in my life. She and I are 9.5 years apart. I'm the oldest of 4 siblings actually, and she's the youngest. And so our childhood, I mean, she was born 7 years after our third sibling. And we were all, we weren't expecting another baby in the family. And then it was a surprise for everybody. And we were all very thrilled. And of course, Rooney was a beautiful, beautiful baby. And we were all old enough to enjoy her a lot. And I think around the time that she was 1.5 years, I think my mother knew instinctively, having, brought up 3 other children, she knew instinctively that something was not right. She had quite a lot of illnesses in her childhood. She was hospitalized a lot. She started having seizures when she was 2 weeks old. But then she continued to grow, and she was beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. But she wouldn't speak, and she would not interact much with us except for in very repetitive ways, which of course we had no idea about at that point of time. We used to see her lining up things. She had a lovely smile, lovely laugh. But I remember this distinct moment when my mother called me. We used to have Polaroid cameras, and my mother called me and said, "Quickly, quickly, get the camera and take a picture." And she was sitting with Rooney in her lap and hugging her. And my mother said, after I took the picture, she said, "This is the first time she's hugged me." you know so she wasn't hugging, and so there were all these signs which my mother picked up as something odd, but we were kids and we just used to enjoy the fun that Rooney brought to us. And then my mom passed away when we were all very young. And so I was kind of, as the oldest sibling, thrown into the role of her primary caregiver in a sense, because my dad was here suddenly coping with the loss of his wife and 4 kids to bring up. So our childhood, I mean, and then soon after that, she was diagnosed with autism, and we hadn't heard the word before. And but a lot of things fell into place when we started reading about it, and we realized that all these things that one thought was spoiled child, naughty child, not listening, um, obviously very smart because of all the things that she used to manage, but we had no idea about autism, really about special needs as well. And so that's after her diagnosis, our real journey of understanding her, being surprised with new challenges every day, but also having wonderful, wonderful moments, lots of funny moments. She still has a great sense of humor. And so yeah, that our childhood was to us very normal, but I guess for people looking at us from the outside, not so regular, not so normal, because here were three older siblings completely involved in the care of their younger sister, who was obviously very challenging. But yeah, apart from that, it was very regular. Yeah.
Sure, sure. Okay. Aparnaji, you talked about challenges as well, and as you told us the story where you lost mother as well, and
Mm-hmm.
there were four siblings, and you lost your mother also in an early age. As a sibling, and when you realized, or
Mm-hmm.
whenever you were told, in whatever way you were told, that there is something called as autism, something that is a disability actually,
Mm-hmm.
and with that kind of a limited awareness also maybe at that point of time,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of thoughts or feelings were challenging to navigate for you as a sibling
Mm-hmm.
at that point of time when you realize that there is something other than the norm?
Mhm. So I think it also depends on different personalities, right? And I think now when I look back, my personality is a nurturing personality. And when I look back at the time that we found out that she had autism and she was going to have challenges, my first instinct was, oh, I'm going to protect her all her life. I'm going to look after her. She's my responsibility. I think even as a young kid, that was my reaction. And in fact, I remember this is very strange as well. She was a baby, and my mother was still alive at that time, and she would just start crying in the evening, and she would cry and cry and cry and cry and cry. And of course, we had no idea that anything was amiss, and she wouldn't stop crying. And my mother used to really have a hard time putting her to sleep. So then, and we lived in Muscat at that time. And I remember the company that my dad worked in, they had an Englishman as a friend, and he came home one day and he said, you Indians, you don't let go of your babies, and you should just put her in her cot and let her cry, and let her cry herself to sleep, and that's how she'll get used to the idea. And so my mother, because she was so tired of this, she said, okay, fine, that's what we're going to do for Rooney. And I remember how torturous it was for the three of us to hear her crying like that. And I finally, being the eldest and very stubborn as well, I just ran and I picked her up from her cot and I said, Mommy, I'm not going to let her cry anymore. I'm just going to rock her to sleep. And so I think my mother was secretly relieved as well because she was struggling with her crying so much. But she wanted to give this a try. And then I remember she turned around and she told me, you just wait and see. You're going to have to look after her all your life. You're spoiling her. And we never realized, how prophetic those words were. But I think that was just my personality, just wanting to mother everybody, look after her. Also, I was the eldest sibling, But I mean, in terms of, we were very confused and very scared as well, you know, about being able to meet the challenges that were now unknown challenges that were in front of us, and whether we would be able to look after her, whether we'd do a good job, or we're going to make mistakes, how is this going to be. But really, I think for the three of us and for my father, our first instinct was, okay, so we're going to take special care of her because she needs it. That was our feeling at that time.
Sure, sure, sure. And so, in what way did you feel that she was really different? Maybe at that time when mom was around, and maybe later on when you actually started caregiving.
Mhm.
What did you find was different about her
Mhm.
in the maybe a little later in the childhood as well?
Mhm. Many things. One was, of course, that she was not speaking at all till she was 5, and and then she had a lot of jargon, so she would continue to use the jargon, and she was babbling, but she wouldn't speak. That was one part of it, and then she would often just disappear from the house, and somehow or the other managed to find her way out, and we eventually realized that she was usually going to the same spot, which was a place in the park nearby, and she would pick up a flower and a leaf, and she would just keep blowing on them, and then just keep looking at what was happening to the leaf and the flower, and she would blow on them. She was obsessed with collecting packets. And again, I talk about her being smart. My dad used to smoke, and she would collect his cigarette packets. And then he used to get very angry because, these expensive Marlboro cigarettes he'd buy, and then she would take the packet and the cigarettes would be strewn around. So then he would say, no, this is Papa's packet. You're not going to take you're not to take Papa's packet. But then, of course, he also realized that she really liked them. So once his packet was finished, he would give her the packet, empty packet. This girl, very young, 2, 3 maybe, she figured out that if she destroyed his cigarettes the moment the packet came, she would get the packet because the packet would be empty. So she used to do these fascinating things. And we'd say, how is a little kid who's not even speaking thinking of things like that? Anything that she wanted, if we locked it somewhere, she would find something to pick the lock with. So whether it's, straightening out boppins, using her nail, or what, she would unscrew things to get at the thing. So these obsessions were very weird. Just sitting and lining up shoes. She used to line up shoes. We used to often find her in the shoe cupboard sitting and lining up shoes. So things like that. And then the tantrums. I mean, what we thought were tantrums at that, like behavior problems, where she would just start crying and would not stop crying, would not stop crying, would not stop crying. It used to just go on for hours and hours and hours and hours. So yeah, these things I remember very distinctly. The clever things she used to do, and then the evenings. Somehow the evenings always used to be really difficult because she used to cry and cry and cry and cry. And then as she grew older, she became obsessed with other things like small plastic animals. And she would collect these animals, she would hold them in her hand, she wouldn't want to play with them like people regularly play with animals. And again, another funny thing I remember, we the three of us decided one day, the siblings decided one day, that we wanted to teach her how to play with toys. So we said, हाथ में नहीं पकड़ते हैं, खेलते हैं, देखो घोड़ा है, उसको भगाएंगे, और ये देखो ऐसे lion roar करेगा. And she was very agitated because all she wanted to do was hold them in her hand. And but we said, नहीं, हम खेलेंगे, हम animals के साथ खेलेंगे. And we joined in with her and everything. The next morning we woke up and realized that there was something different about the animals. And like, what's so different? Realized she chewed all their legs off so that we wouldn't be able to make them walk and run anymore. And then that became her thing. She would get a new packet of animals and sabse pehle tang tod dein. So she used to do these things, which were very fascinating, very different. We never remember doing these things. So even though we'd got this diagnosis, to us, she was like anyone else in a sense, right? And she was our sister. And so then these things used to really surprise her. We would never think that, okay, so this is part of her autism. We'd say, this is very strange. What is she doing? And let's try to fix it. Let's try to teach her the right thing. That kind of thing would happen.
Sure. Mm-hmm. So, like you gave a very wonderful example that we can have some idea. In fact, us as professionals also would need some concrete actionables like these, which come out in narratives. Basically, it's not something that is out of a textbook. Like you said, as siblings, you tried. One of your goal was to just play with her, or just teach her that this is how you play. That's something that comes straight from an occupational therapy textbook as well. So I'm sure you did something that was very natural, very instinctive, very sibling-wise, very siblingish. And so, were there any other things other than playing with her, or making sure that she plays a little more naturally, which you thought worked for her? In fact, maybe even better than any therapies could, or therapist or therapies could work for her. Were there any other specific things, maybe intuitively, that you did, as not just you, maybe, or all the siblings together, 4 of you, which showed you something interesting later on?
Yeah. So she started. So firstly, she used to love songs. She loved music, and like I was talking about her evening tantrums, there were certain songs that used to calm her down. So we would just sit and take turns singing to her, and we would sing and sing and sing and sing. And then, like I said, she wasn't talking. And I remember she was a little over 5. And one night we were sitting with my dad and we were playing cards. And she was sitting and playing with whatever, her small animals or something. And we suddenly heard this singing, this really beautiful singing. And she was singing a song. And this was the first time we actually heard words coming out of her mouth. And I'm just going to say the first 2 lines of the song. It said, "Take the ribbon from your hair, Shake it loose and let it fall. Lay it soft upon my skin like the shadows on the wall. This is a 5-year-old who's never spoken in her life is suddenly singing. And she's singing these complicated words. And we were stunned and we just kept, and Manish, that came from the fact, I think, that we just sang so much to her because we realized that she liked music. So we used to sing to her all day. And I think that singing turned into speech at some point of time. And then she would started using phrases from songs to communicate, right? And so then we would sing to her to communicate. Now, no one told us that we should do that, but somehow instinctively we knew that, okay, this is a way that we found a connection with her. So we're just going to work on that connection. Then she started, we started naming things, naming actions that she was doing again without anyone guiding us. And we'd say, oh, Rooney bhag rahi hai, Rooney khel rahi hai, those kind of things. And we taught her. So she would often wet her clothes. She would wet herself. She would urinate in her clothes. And so we used to say, we gave it a name and we said, Susuai, Rooney ko Susuai. And we toilet trained her in a sense. And then she learned this word Susu, I remember. And so but she wouldn't use it meaningfully. She would just say Susu, 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 Susu karo, Susu karo, Susu karo. And so every time she said Susu karo, we would put her on the pot, and then she learned how to make the connection between that word. And so I think we did a lot of things like that instinctively. She used to hate bathing. We didn't realize there were sensory issues, of course, at that point of time. And so we had a bath song because singing was like this channel to her. So we used to have a bath song. And then when she came out and we wanted to put cream on her, we wanted to put powder. So for every action, we had a song. And so that used to, so we were giving her the reinforcement that she needed to get her to do things. So yeah, so we did a lot of these things when she was younger. So she got, completely trained in what we call ADLs today. Mm-hmm. And there are so many other people who are much younger than her, but I mean, she's 40 now, and not so independent in ADLs. And they've been through therapies, occupational therapy. They've been through so many things that Rooney didn't have. But she just learned along with us. And because we were just a very involved family, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, couple of wonderful ideas from your narrative. Actually, it was about play, like in the previous narrative, but it's also about speech. It's about self-regulation, like you said. It would kind of regulate her when it is a music thing, and most importantly, ADL. I mean, that's a huge gain that you probably have seen very closely happening as an influence or as a direct impact of siblings around.
Yes, absolutely. Right. And Manish, we were doing it all the time. It was not just in a therapy room, right?
Yeah.
It was completely like part of her life. It was integrated in her life. It wasn't isolated to just a specialist working with her.
Yeah, and also about speech, like you said, that's huge gain. Like, a sibling gaining speech because she just wants to repeat what her other siblings were already be singing and all. And we see that happening with all children. Actually, the child who's young but who is not yet going to school. We know that they will frequently repeat the homework that is being taught to the older sibling. This younger one who hasn't even started going to school actually knows 1, 2, 3 ABC and the rhymes, sometimes even better than the older one.
Yeah.
Just by listening. Yeah. To somehow they tend to listen and be attentive towards a sibling much more than anyone else.
Yeah. And the words that she picked up were very much the words that we used, later as her speech kept developing. So I remember when I was in college, I was in LSI doing psychology, and she would often say now to anybody, it's very psychological, and she picked up that word. She didn't really know the meaning, but she'd say, it's very psychological. That was a phrase that she would use. Yeah.
That's good. Right. So like you said about you started studying psychology, and till that time, I'm assuming that you were pursuing your own study or a student kind of a role as well, along with the caregiving, the part of being a family. How was it that what worked for you to kind of navigate through those initial feelings that you said that you used to feel confused and scared? And also there was a sense of responsibility, not as given by someone, but your own feelings of taking it up, say, now we have to make sure that she doesn't have to go through any kind of a hardship. And we are going to make sure that we do this. But along with that, you had your own student and scholar life as well, maybe developing your own thoughts of developing a career for yourself, and at the same time, the disability related thoughts and challenges as well. So what kind of worked for your own mental health, your own feelings of equanimity and resilience, which in fact is the objective of this program, is to find out and explore what is it that you felt or experienced or practiced maybe at some point of time when you would have felt low, or you would have felt defeated maybe, or you would have just felt that there are too many challenges, then I can take it up. But still you kind of went on. So what kind of things worked for you as a person, as Aparna Das as a person, rather than anybody else?
Yeah, so I mean, there's no hiding the fact that there were days where it just seemed too difficult to handle, and especially when I was a teenager. So when you're a teenager, you're going through your own other emotional stuff as well. And to have a very, like, this huge responsibility, which was never just my responsibility. I'm not saying that. So I think what worked for us as a biggish family, my dad and my other siblings, and I, was that if someone was down, someone else was always there to lift them up. So if I was having a really bad time, my brother or my sister or my dad would kind of take it from there. And so we supported each other. And I think, and one of the things that when you've written about this discussion is, how to make the family grow. And I think that's getting a support system in place. Again, it was not done because it was prescribed by a psychiatrist or a psychologist or anything like that. These are things that happened instinctively. We belong to a generation where families were still quite close to each other. So my nanny's family was very close to us, and I had a lot of aunts, a lot of cousins, and Rooney just was part of everybody's life. So she still holds those relationships so dear to her. She remembers every single birthday of every aunt, every uncle, every cousin. She still calls them up, sings to them on the phone. So I think having that kind of support system, so it was very difficult. There were days when it was just very difficult. There were days when I'd, fight with my father and say, I can't go out with my friends because I have to look after Rooney. Or, my brother, my sister would say that, can't uh, can't go anywhere, everybody else goes out, we don't get to go out. And and we would not want to go out also, but we wanted to fuss, and we wanted to take our anger out on somebody or the other. So I think at that point of time also, I think my dad did a commendable job handling all these teenage emotions that all of us had. So I think that kind of strengthened us, and that helped us build our own inner strength. Just supporting each other when somebody else, also giving space to each other. So if my brother wanted to go out with his friends, my sister and I would be with Rooney. If my sister, so we'd help each other out. Rooney would often go out with us as well. I mean, so many of my school friends and college friends that I'm in touch with today all know Rooney very well. So she was very much a part of our life. So I think um, not isolating ourselves from the rest of the world. And even though sometimes we would end up having to isolate ourselves because there were big, huge, challenging behaviors happening, but also being there for each other, I think those are the things that helped us build our reserves of strength that have sort of carried on. So we weren't, in a sense, we didn't let each other give up. And so I think that really helped us.
Sure. So you were a sibling, and there were other siblings as well. You had a brother as well. As far as a female sibling is concerned, usually parents feel a little different about a female sibling. They always understand culturally, traditionally, they know that a female sibling should not even think of taking caregiving or thinking of being connected to the parent, to her parents' family or any other responsibilities. In fact, they always will have this feeling that at some point of time the female sibling has to get married and has to take care of her own family, right? So I think that would kind of create a sort of dilemma as well for parents, for the family, in fact, that whether it should be a responsibility should be there with the, or whether it should not be. How did your family kind of worked around it, kind of made sure that there is something very clear, something that's really very naturally being taken up, while also understanding that the stages of life for a female sibling are a little different than a male sibling. How did your siblings, your family kind of work around it?
Maybe because Manish, because we were a family that was very involved, and we also supported each other. We never looked at anything as any one person's responsibility. I think that really helped us as well. And there were people like well-meaning friends and relatives who would come and say to my father that, you're a single father, you should get married again, but nobody will marry you because you have this daughter who has special needs, you should send her away somewhere. बच्चों का क्या होगा, इतनी बड़ी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, बेटी का क्या होगा, कौन शादी करेगी, all of that stuff. But we would not hear it, and we would not tolerate it basically if people would talk like that. So we were firstly very sure that Rooney was ours, and Rooney is our family member, and there's no, she's our blood, and there's no way that she's going to be a burden on us, or we're going to consider her a burden. So I think that decision firstly helped. And then at some point of time, when I know that I started growing up and people started talking about, okay, you have to get married and all that, and I would say, "Ma, I won't get married, I'll just be with Rooney all my life." That's what my thought was. And I was sure that if I even decided to get married, that person, whoever I married, would know right from the start that Rooney is going to be part of my life. Rooney is going to be with me, and so that had to be shared up front, and that's what happened.
Sure.
Yeah, but I just want to add to that, Manish, because so many years later, I mean, I have grown up kids now, and see, this is the other thing. I think because of the way that we were brought up and the way that we just knew that she's our blood, there's no question of getting rid of our responsibility or anything like that. I mean, we wouldn't abandon each other. Why would we abandon her? My kids also, because Rooney's been with us, my kids have grown up feeling like that about her as well. So I know that if something were to happen to us, my kids would, and I've never said to them, you have to take on Rooney Masi's responsibility, but they're there. So that's how it is. I think it's just been like that. I mean, she's our family. Why should we look at her as somebody else's responsibility? So today my kids are 24 and 22 years old, and they know that, after Mama, Papa, it's going to be us with Rooney Masi. So that's just what it is. And then what surprises me a lot, and I'm not being judgmental, but I'm just thinking of what creates this kind of mentality in us, because now that I'm running a residential center, people call me and say, I have a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old diagnosed with autism, and can we put them in your center? And I explain to them, I say, it's very difficult now for you, but on the other hand, this is the time when he or she needs you, and you can learn, educate yourself, but your child needs you, don't put them in the center. No, we're planning another baby. And so immediately, right from the beginning, there's this thought that in order to have another child, in order to do well by that other child, in order to bring that other child up, I have to get rid of this one. But that's not okay. That's not okay at all. I don't think people should even look at that as an option. And I think when people start accepting that, okay, so this is Aparna, and if I want to marry her, I also have Rooney. Rooney is a part of Aparna. And same with Anisha, Amitabh, my brother and sister. I mean, their spouses. I mean, Rooney is family to them as well.
Sure.
Yeah, and my other sister has passed away actually some years ago, but my brother-in-law, he still cares so much for Rooney, because she's been a part of his family and her kids. So I think that was something that we sort of never gave ourselves that option right from the beginning.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't think parents should feel guilty.
Yeah.
It's blood. Yeah.
Your family makes it sound so simple.
And it wasn't. It wasn't simple.
Kind of, it's just there. I mean, there is no need for any kind of special uh, arrangement or special agreement or a special understanding about it.
And
Yeah,
no guilt.
it's pretty natural. It kind of naturally flowed in.
Yeah.
From one person to another, a collective responsibility. Also, you said, and also you said that it kind of naturally, like you said, you haven't even talked about it, but it kind of automatically you can see already that it's already passing on to the next generation as well. I mean, that's an amazing thought, and that's something commendable for one family of yours. But of course, it can be something that can be taken up as an example, as something that can be enlightening for many other families.
Yeah, and at Arunima we have so many adults, and I've got to know their wonderful siblings. As a result of, so the siblings who are the family members who are at Arunima, I've become friends with their siblings. And what we have in common is that we are siblings. I may be much older than the other siblings, but we're all siblings, and they're fantastic siblings. They're so concerned about their brothers and sisters. They have individual conversations with me, separate conversations with me, separate relationship with me. They have because of their brother or sister. I mean, very independent of their parents as well. So there, I mean, it's not unique in a sense. Our story is not unique. Rooney's story is not unique at all. There are so many siblings like that, and happy, well settled siblings, married siblings, unmarried siblings who are very involved in their brothers and sisters' lives.
Sure. Aparnaji, we had Indu Chaswalji one of the conversations, and she of course comes from the parent perspective rather than sibling perspective, but she had a very valid and enlightening point, and that was, and she was talking about herself as well when she said that why should we even expect siblings to not kind of not lead their own natural normal life. They have all the right to lead their own life. They have all the right to pursue their own family, their own dreams, their own careers. Why should we even take them for granted to say, we haven't even talked about it, but I know that after me, you are the one who's going to take care of all these, take care of my child. And it sounded absolutely, very much in place to say, yes, of course. I mean, a sibling also has an equal right to live their own fulfilling and happy life in whatever they feel as happy and fulfilling. Right? So in your family, like your father was there, always there, he would have also thought at some point of time that, is this something that I am going to, or how am I going to pass this on? Am I not imposing something? Am I not taking my children, other children, who have all the right to be in their own way, granted by, expecting them to do something in certain ways? Should I have minimal expectations from them and figure out how it is going to be, but have very limited and minimal expectations as siblings from them? Or should I kind of assume that it's all yours? It's not. It's something that will come to you as a responsibility. How did your family or your father kind of worked around it to say whether to take other children's perspective or their life into account, and how do we ensure what has to be done?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a father, it must have been very difficult for him, and it must have been very frightening for him as well. About how are we going to manage? But I think we were very sure that she was as much a part of us as any other person. So yeah, he must have gone through times of guilt and worry and fear about what was going to happen. He may have had this worry in his mind that, about me, that if she gets married and goes away, what's going to happen to Rooney? But he never ever said to me, no, you can't get married, you have to stay home and look after Rooney. He never said that, and he didn't have to say that. And we have all pursued careers. My brother works with a huge multinational company today. He's a very successful man. My sister did very well while she was alive. I mean, she's got a wonderful family. All of us got married. No one stayed single because of Rooney. We've actually been able to pursue our dreams. I'm doing something that I love doing, and here I can definitely say it's because of Rooney that I've got what I love doing, right? So I don't think she's held us back in any way. you know that's just my perspective. This is how our life was meant to be. And I'm sure my dad felt guilty. I think it's a parent. So Indu speaking as a parent, she's saying that. But I don't think there's an option really. I mean, she's our sister.
Sure. A lot of parents, Aparna, when they come to us, they actually also ask, as professionals also and otherwise as well, they say that, okay, we do have another sibling at home, and but we still do not know how to make sure that what could be done to bring them together, or kind of put in something concrete or objective. On the other side, I also had a couple of siblings, young teenagers maybe, someone who is in a grade 10 or grade 12, approaching me to say, I have a sibling who has disability, autism, ADHD, or whatever. And I would like to know, as a sibling, I would like to know what is it that I can do. So they are at a stage where they can directly receive inputs. However, I would like to know from you, as if I am listening to this conversation as a sibling of another child, maybe younger to me, maybe older than me, who has a disability. So as a sibling, what can I do for my my peer, my younger brother or older brother or sister who has a disability? What is it that can be taken up as a takeaway from you as a sibling?
I think one of the biggest things is to do what comes instinctively to you, to follow your instincts. I have to say, and I mean, you're a professional, but I'm a professional too. And we can, if I'm saying this for you, I'm saying it for myself as well. A lot of professionals tend to confound families and confuse families, and you stop trusting your own instincts. So I think the first thing that you have to do is to trust your instincts, because no one knows your family member as well as you do, right? You know what makes him or her happy. You know what makes him or her sad. You know what your family dynamic is like. How can you take something that a therapist tells you, which doesn't match with your family dynamic, and then try to change everything to fit into your family dynamic? I'm not saying, completely disregard what a therapist is saying. I'm not saying that at all. But at some point of time, if you have to work together with a therapist, you have to come to some sort of agreement that works for both, right? So I think the most important thing really is to be able to trust your instinct, and to um, sort of try and include your family member in every aspect of your life. There is no greater learning than being included and just being able to live life the way everybody else is living life. So yeah, I mean, even as I speak, these funny stories come to my mind. So when Rooney is on a lot of anti-epilepsy medication. So a lot of these medications affected her hormones as well. And so there came a point in time when she suddenly was not having her period. And she must have been about 16. And I think my son was a baby at that time. So she'd seen me pregnant, and suddenly seen that Didi has this big stomach and there's a baby in the stomach. And, I would make her touch my stomach when the baby was moving and things like that. And then the baby was born. And so she knew that there was a baby also. And then she was not having her period. So my sister and I, we were talking about this, and we said, we better take her to a gynecologist and find out what's wrong. And then we just, in our conversation, of course, we were very protective about her. She was always with one of us. So we knew that no one could have, done anything to her. But we said, what if the gynecologist asks us to get a test done, a pregnancy test done, and what are we going to do? And phone, and let's not be worried about that. So my sister and I had been having this conversation. So we took Rooney with us. And Rooney is oblivious to the fact that, these guys are worried about my period. Or so we thought. We thought she was oblivious to it. We walk into the room thinking, we'll just stay calm. If the gynecologist asks us to do a pregnancy test, we'll just get a pregnancy test done. It's a big deal. But we walk in, we open the door, and Rooney goes, "There's a baby in my stomach." What? Where did that? And the gynecologist looked at us and was like, "Whoa, what have you been doing as a family?" And my sister and I looked at each other, and but it was, now we can look back. I can look back and laugh at it, because that was the consequence of having Rooney part of everything in our lives. She just learned, where in the world did she learn that from? And she suddenly started walking. When you're pregnant and you walk like you waddle like a duck. So she started walking like that and said, "There's a baby." How did she know that we were going to a doctor who deals with this kind of thing? So, but again, we never thought to separate her from any of our experiences, our difficulties, our happinesses, every experience she was part of. So I would just say to all siblings that your life will become easier if you make him or her, your sibling with special needs, a part of as much of your life as you possibly can. Yeah. That's probably a big general message that I'd give.
And in fact, you had also talked a little briefly and discussed, it's not just about your sense of responsibility, caregiving, or love towards the sibling. In fact, you have said multiple times that she has been an inspiration for you.
Mm-hmm.
So do let us know a little bit more about how has she been an inspiration?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, in a sense, she sort of inspired the path that I've taken in life, taking psychology and then doing a course in special education, wanting to learn more about special education, wanting to understand differently abled people, differently wired minds. Just fascinating me with the way that she thinks. I told you about how she used to open locks with straightened out boppins, and just being able to stop and look at, whoa, that is an amazing mind, and it works differently, and I want to understand that as well. And not just, so I think that sort of changed my perspective even towards my own children, as a teacher of many other children, who I've worked with mild learning disabilities, with severe learning disabilities, to not ever look at them as a label, but look at them as a mind that works differently. And here, this is my job and my privilege, in a sense, to be able to figure out how these minds work. And it's just, I mean, that doesn't make me, that doesn't affect just my interaction with people with special needs. It affects my interaction with other young people, with my children as they were growing up, to be able to sit back and think about, okay, why is he or she doing this? Even if they're doing something naughty, why are they doing something naughty? What are they trying to achieve through it? And I think Rooney just made me analytical in that sense, to look at things. So yeah, I'd say she's been the biggest inspiration in my life. I also, she still is not the easiest person in the world, and she still is pretty challenging. But I think that we need people like her to keep us on our toes, to not become too complacent. I often say to the staff at Arunima, if we're talking about just our body language towards the people that we work with, the way that we speak to them, and I say, just think about this. Would you be able to say this to Rooney? If you can say it to Rooney, you can say it to other people as well. But if you're too scared to say it to Rooney, then you shouldn't be saying it to other people. Because Rooney will tell you to your face, "Hey, just shut up," if she doesn't like something that you've said. So I think, she continues to teach us every day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So she's pretty articulate about.
Oh, she's very articulate in her own way now. I mean, she still has a lot of repetitive talk, and there's lots of comprehension that doesn't happen. But what she wants to express herself, she will express.
Yeah, sure. So, and also, one is about you, and you kind of taking it, wondering about how Rooney thinks the way she thinks, maybe discussing and talking about it, maybe just maybe just putting some kind of your professional knowledge also in it, to wonder about how it is, and also kind of assimilating and applying on your own children as well, that you talked about. Similarly, what were the other siblings, your other brothers and sisters? Do you think they did something which they kind of had to do to ensure their own sense of balance, their own sense of equanimity with this whole thing of having a sibling, disability factors, their own balancing with their own lives? Was there anything that you did in certain way and they did it, but they did it in a different way?
Yeah, I mean, that would be a conversation to have with them. But I can definitely see how, I mean, I can give an example of my sister who's not alive anymore. She eventually became a teacher at the Heritage School in Gurgaon. And yeah, she was teaching there for many years. And somehow, slowly, all the kids with special needs started being put in her class because she was so good with them, you know. So and she'd never, you know, done a course in special education, but it was her own sister who taught her to be the way. Something made parents comfortable with having Anisha as their children's teacher, because she knew how to push them, but she also understood them, you know. So I'd say that my brother, and so his wife is now working with adults with special needs, you know. So I feel like, you know, in their whatever they did to cope and, you know, to manage their lives at that point of time, I think Rooney sort of have had a lasting effect on everybody. Yeah.
Sure.
Mhm.
Right. So um, when Aparna Das looks herself in the mirror,
Mhm.
what does she tell herself?
That I'm growing old. I don't know.
What
Well,
what keeps her going? What keeps her going every single day?
mhm. Oh, the huge energy that we get. For me, it's Arunima the place, and of course Arunima the person, but Arunima the place and all the other people that are there. The huge energy that they give out, and the, you know, imagine being in the privileged position, and you are in that privileged position, Manish. In the kind of profession that you're in right now, you know, being in the privileged position of learning something new every day, right? That is what keeps me going for sure. And a lot of our staff as well, you know, we there are days, we have tough days, we have really good days, and then we have very tough days as well. And then they come back smiling, and then we can talk about those tough moments and we can laugh about them. And they've said without being asked, they've said, you know, people ask us when we go home, you know, isn't this hard? And we say, coming home is hard sometimes, but going there is not hard, because we just feel so energized every time that we're there. So that's definitely what keeps me going, you know.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, any kind of message, anything that you would like to convey to parents
Mhm.
of children with developmental delays, developmental difficulties, or autism,
Yeah.
Just on the aspects that we kind of take it as an objective that needs to be something done about their own resilience, basically, which I believe is the key factor
Yes.
when it comes down to uh, working with children, not just working, maybe just living with them, maybe just ensuring their growth, getting them to grow in their own life, making them, watching them grow older in front of us.
Mhm.
The resilience that we need, the perseveration that we need.
Mhm.
What kind of, or any open-ended kind of a message that you would like to give to parents before we kind of conclude the program?
So there are two things that I would like to say. One is, you know, what I've said earlier about siblings as well, to really go with your instinct, to not suddenly feel that because your child has been diagnosed with a special need, that you are at a loss, and to not feel like you're, you know, you're incapable. You are as capable as the mother or the father of a child who is neurotypical, right? You are their parent after all. And so I think what happens sometimes is when you receive this diagnosis, you're so suddenly thrown into the deep end that you feel like, oh God, I just need lifesavers now to tell me what to do. But if you sort of take things, so we sort of took things into our own hands because we didn't have those lifesavers. We didn't have the professionals who knew so much about autism at that point of time, right? So we kind of had to come up with our own resources and our own resourcefulness. So if parents who have resources outside as well can do that and actually look into themselves and try and draw strength from what they have, and what they would do if their child did not have a label, did not have a diagnosis, you know. So to just be a parent and to trust their instinct, I think that's one part of it. And the other part of it is, in a sense, quite the opposite of what I just said, and that is to make your own support system as well. And by support system, I certainly mean professionals, but I also mean other people, friends, relatives, because families of people with special needs need a lot of support, but they also end up being some of the loneliest families because they get so caught up in just the day-to-day needs of their child that they don't build the support system that they need to. And I think in a sense we were lucky that we were so, four siblings and dad and nanny and aunts and cousins and all, but not everybody has that kind of thing. But I still at some point of time started feeling like, gosh, are we the only family with these challenges? Where are all the other people? Maybe they gave their kids a better chance at special education than we were able to give Rooney, all those things. And then now that we started Arunima about 9 years ago, I feel so much more supported. A lot of parents come to me and say, we feel so supported because of Arunima, and they don't realize how supported I feel as Rooney's sister, to have them and to have their stories and to understand that this is our family is not the only family that went through these challenges. A lot of us have been through these challenges, and we sort of strengthen each other by sharing our difficulties, by sharing our stories, by sharing pictures, by sharing videos, by putting out messages in the parents WhatsApp group saying, God, I'm really, really missing my son or my daughter today. And then lots of other parents say, yes, we are also feeling the same way. This has been very hard for us. This COVID period, when no, I'm not allowing anyone to come and meet their children right now. Everybody's suffering. Everybody can talk, So just having that kind of support system. So on the one hand, building your own inner resources, but on the other hand, also building up a support system for yourself, right? I think those are the two things I'd like to leave with families.
Thank you so much, Aparnaji. I think your narratives, your perspective of a sibling and going on to making it your way of your mission in your life is really commendable. And I think there can be a lot of families who would take back something from the talk that the conversation that we had.
Right.
I think one of the feelings that I definitely have is a feeling of a hats off to you, to your family, who has seen so many things. It's not just about having a child with disability or autism, but there are so many other things that you all as a family have been managed or have been navigated. So it's really commendable, and hats off to you, to your entire Arunima team, and to your family as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
With that, we would conclude this live interaction, and I would be happy to convey to you if there are any comments, any questions that come after the view. May not be in the live, but otherwise, I would be happy to share those comments and questions with you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.